Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is remind. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you'll hear remind used is to mean to cause someone to remember something. So it could be a date, a time, an appointment. Maybe it's something you need to purchase while you're out and shopping. But essentially, we're doing something or someone is saying something in order to cause another person to remember. A second way the verb remind gets used is to mean to bring something to the attention of another person. So here we might be making them aware of a certain announcement or maybe a policy of some kind. A third way remind gets used is to mean sort of to put in one's mind. This is a bit similar to that idea of remember. You should know that remind is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, you would just add ing to form reminding. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, remind, d, ends in a voiced d sound. So our ed ending is going to make an id sound. And we're going to add an extra syllable as we say this past tense and participle form. Reminded, reminded. Now, I do have a couple phrasal verbs for us to look at. The first is to remind about. This means we're causing someone to think about something they had forgotten. An example of this: my mom reminded me about the family reunion later this summer. So maybe I'd forgotten the dates. She says something and it makes me remember them. A second phrasal verb you might hear is to remind of. When we use this, we are suggesting or saying that someone else is being caused to think of someone or something else because there is a similarity or something that's the same, a likeness. And I've actually heard this phrasal verb a great deal recently. I have a very cute 9-month-old nephew, and as extended family and friends have met him, many of them say to my brother, "Oh my gosh, he reminds me of Katie," or "he reminds me of your sister." So there's something about the way we look that makes people kind of see that likeness or something that's the same. I'm not sure if it's the way we smile or what. I don't know if I see that similarity, but he's pretty adorable, so it's a lovely compliment. Now let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different tenses. Today we're going to practice the imperative and the simple present. Let's start with the imperative. The imperative is really a command. We're telling someone to do some action or maybe not to do a particular action. There is no stated subject. So as we begin our commands here, we can start our sentences just with the base verb. And the reason for that is our subject is implied. It's either you, singular, if we're talking to one person or writing to one person, or it's you, plural, if we're speaking to or writing to multiple people. Now, many people feel like telling someone else to do a particular action seems maybe a bit too forceful. So we can always soften or make things a bit more polite by using the word please. We can put please at the beginning of a sentence or we can put it at the end. Okay? You can see that in my example here. Please remind me to buy milk and eggs. This is a sentence I say quite often to my husband. I can be quite forgetful when it comes time for grocery shopping. So many times I will say to him, right, like I want help remembering these things. So this is a great phrase to use. Please remind me. Now, if you want to make a negative imperative, you would start with do not and the base verb. And again, you can add please to the beginning or the end if you are wanting to sort of soften the statement. Let's take a look at my example here. Don't remind me that we have to go back to work tomorrow. I'm having too much fun this weekend. So this phrase, don't remind me, can be heard quite frequently. And when it's used, it's not meant in a mean way. Many times people are being a bit funny or silly, but really what they're saying is, oh, I don't want to think about this topic, right? Let's talk about something else. In this case, this person wants to be very present and enjoy their weekend. They do not want to think about the following day or the next day. Now let's take a look at the simple present. Uh, we use this verb tense to talk about our habits and routines. We also use it for facts. And the thing most of my students have found to be the most difficult is to remember to alter the verb based on our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb in the affirmative. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to add an S to the end of our verb. And you can see that in my example here. Our office reminds all patients of their appointments 2 business days prior to their appointments. Okay? Maybe this is a dentist office describing their policy. I know my dentist sends text to remind patients like myself when we have appointments. Some offices might have phone calls, others might do emails. It's all kind of different and just whatever they wish, but that's the idea. They want you to remember to show up at the right place and at the right time. Now, if you want to make a negative simple present sentence, our structure is going to be to pay attention to the subject again. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use do not and then the base verb. And if our subject is he, she, or it, we'll use does not and then the base verb. So notice, we're not adding an S to the end of the verb in the negative. You can see that in the example here. These songs don't remind me of high school. Okay? Sometimes we hear certain music and it sort of takes us back. It makes us think about an earlier period. In this sentence, we've got the negative. They do not make me remember or recall. Now, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple present, start with do or does. Then we're going to have our subject and then the base verb. Okay? So again, no S on the end of the verb. We're only doing that in the affirmative when the subject is he, she, or it. So here's another example. Does this person remind you of anyone? So maybe someone is trying to look for that similarity or that likeness. They're thinking, there's something special, something, some sort of connection here, and maybe they're struggling to place exactly what that similarity is or to whom they are similar. I want to point out, if you notice, after this verb remind, we always have an object, right? So who is being caused to remember, or who is being asked to like bring their attention to a certain thing. So you can see the object me used in several of my examples here. We also had the doctor's office that reminds all patients. My question, does this person remind you, right? So very common with this verb. So we want to sort of know who is being caused to remember. You could also see that in these 2 phrasal verb examples. I used me again in those, but again, very, very common. Now, let's take a moment to look at some words that are related to our verb remind. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun reminder. This is a thing that causes someone to remember something. An example here. The teacher sends home reminders to parents every Wednesday. So this might be a series of notes asking parents maybe to send in a little money for a field trip, or to sign some form, or to send something in for a school party. It could be many things, right? But this note, the purpose of it is to cause the parent to remember. Another word you might hear is the adjective remindful. This is just describing something that is acting as a reminder. An example of this adjective in a sentence might be, remindful of its Hawaiian culinary roots, the new restaurant will greet you with visions of a tropical escape. So this is a very descriptive statement. I think it came from a restaurant review. So kind of painting this picture, when you walk in, you're going to see kind of a tropical environment. And it kind of reminds you, oh yes, the food has Hawaiian inspiration. So yes, it would be tropical in how it looks. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.